All right, let's bring him in. Jeff Paterson, the host of Rink Wide Vancouver, joins us now wearing his Better Collective hoodie. Absolutely love to see it. There it is. Jeff, how you doing today?
I'm good. But tell me honestly, Dave, when you texted me just before the show and said, it's our trade deadline primer, did you think the deadline was this Friday?
No, I didn't. I was looking at my schedule, and I appreciate you didn't share the full message, but I texted you and you said, because you said, what's going to be next Tuesday's show? And I said, oh, it'll be the trade deadline recap. And then you said, the trade deadline's on Friday. And I knew that. I know that. I do a lot of content planning. I know that. But I was looking at my calendar when you texted me, and which is why I texted Tuesday, because I was looking at my next Tuesday as well. So anyways.
All good. And I know this is Canucks Convo, but you were just talking about the Devils a fair bit there. Mm-hmm. I don't know how closely people have paid attention, but Washington's running away with the Metro. In this current playoff format, Carolina and New Jersey are basically on a collision course. You talk about two teams that need to get over the hump, and one of them's going out in the first round. Like, it's going to be a massive disappointment for whichever team comes up on the short end of that one. And so, is there a mini arms race to be had? Do they look at that? And I mean, we've seen Carolina make one big move, but are they going to make others? And New Jersey, it's kind of quietly going about its business. But yeah, for people that haven't paid attention to the East, it's an enticing first-round matchup, but somebody's going down in flames in round number one. Two teams that had certainly higher expectations than that at the outset of the season.
I was looking at the playoff picture. I was recently, and I have looked, and I know that we're going to talk trade deadline with you, Jeff. I know we are, but it's the Winnipeg Jets, and we talk a lot about playoff Hellebuyck. It came up in Four Nations, right? It came up a lot during the Four Nations of, and it's a big game. Connor Hellebuyck goes away. Do you want the Canucks to face the Jets? I feel like that's crazy to say, but if you're looking at it from a Canucks fan perspective of okay, who do you want to face in round one? Last year it was the Predators. We were pretty unapologetic about that. It was the Nashville Predators. That was the team that you wanted to face. Is it the Winnipeg Jets? Is that who you'd like to face if you have to choose between them, the Golden Knights, and the Oilers?
So if you draw the Winnipeg Jets, the Vancouver Canucks, number one strategy is going to be, we're going to lean on past Jets history and hope that Connor Hellebuyck somehow can't stop pucks after another magical season. What was part of the problem for Hellebuyck and the Jets last year? They ran into the Avalanche with Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen and Cale Makar, and on it goes. No wonder. There were a lot of pucks put in his face and ultimately in his net. The Canucks are not last year's Colorado Avalanche. Make no mistake about that. So I hate the matchup against the Winnipeg Jets for the Vancouver Canucks. You saw what happened. It was the tail end of a road trip there last month, but they got absolutely schooled. Kyle Connor went to town in the first period.
Forgot about that.
If not for a Nils Höglander late goal breaking the shutout, which reminds me of a conversation we had earlier in the season about breaking shutouts late in hockey games and how dare they. So I hope you don't hold that against Nils Höglander for breaking Connor Hellebuyck's shutout bid. But
it's not like they pulled the goalie down 6-0. That's
true.
What the conversation was about.
Look, the Jets are in a different class than the Vancouver Canucks. And yes, upsets happen, and you play the game, and you hope that a healthy Quinn Hughes or Kevin Lankinen could stand on his head. Again, hope. That becomes your biggest sort of weapon and drawing card. And it doesn't get a whole lot better. They played Vegas twice and scored 2 goals, once in each of those games. So, unfortunately, for the way the Canucks are kind of spinning their wheels right now, there isn't a particularly good matchup in a 1-8 contest in the first round of the playoffs.
J-Pat, it was another weekend where Canucks couldn't score. And, of course, Quinn Hughes is out of the lineup, so you kind of understand that to some extent. But overall this season, when you look at this club's offensive struggles, how much responsibility do you think Rick Tocchet bears for that versus the arguments about lack of personnel?
Yeah, I know people have been screaming about Rick Tocchet, and I have sort of looked more at the players and say, hey, we go to all these practices, we see that Rick Tocchet doesn't have them dump the puck to the corner and chasing after it, that he keeps talking after every game about getting to the inside and making plays and holding on to pucks, but ultimately the proof is in the pudding, and it's not just these 2 games coming out of the break where they've scored once each, and Jake DeBrusk's the only player on the Canucks to have scored a goal since the Four Nations tournament. Even before the break, the 2-1 win over the Leafs. You got a victory, but you scored 2 goals. You needed an overtime penalty shot to get a 2-1 win against San Jose. So they got 9 goals in their last 5 games. That's not going to get it done very often. It's amazing that they have 3 wins out of those 5 games with such little output. So, yeah, I get all the heats on Elias Paterson, and it should be, and he has been woeful all season long. But if we put that conversation to the side, and then you start to look at others, like, they don't have a forward with more than 35 points. It's going to be March here in a couple of days, and the Canucks leading forward has 35 points. DeBrusk is scoring. He's doing what he's paid to do. I think Brock has looked stuck here for a little while. I know he scored the winner against the Leafs, but you can understand with all that's swirling around him and his future. And I just didn't ever think that there was a fit there with Philip Hedl. And he even joked about it coming back from Four Nations when he was asked about playing with Hedl and O'Connor. And he said, yeah, like, I got to keep up with these guys. And there just really hasn't been a whole fit there. So I saw at practice today, at least, that they are shaking things up a little bit. And you're moving the pieces around. And again, you come back to hope. But that's all they kind of got right now. And so, Connor Garland's gone remarkably quiet. Kiefer Sherwood had this incredible first half, and the effort's there and the energy and all the hits, but he's got 2 goals in 22 games. Like, where's his production? And on it goes. And so at some point, I do think you have to ask, like, couldn't just about any other coach get this level of offensive output out of this collection of players? I like Rick Tocchet. I've enjoyed dealing with him. I think I've learned a lot about the game being around him on a regular basis. I'm not sitting here saying he's got to go. I know there are a lot of people that are in that camp, but look, if this organization is jacking ticket prices, and they are, you're asking people to buy in, and are people really going to want to shell out hard-earned money for another season of this next year if nothing changes? And so that's why the trade deadline is fascinating. This is going to be an incredible summer. And all of it against the backdrop of trying to convince Quinn Hughes to re-sign with this group in a year or year and a half's time. There's a lot of work to do because they're just outside of the captain. They're just this complete lack of elite level skill and ultimately production. And yeah, I do think that some of it has to be put at the foot of the coach.
Jeff, trade deadline is on March 7th. We just looked it up. Is Brock Besser going to be a Canuck after the trade deadline?
Let's acknowledge it's his 28th birthday today, so happy birthday to him.
Sorry, Brock.
Yeah, here's your gift. It's a one-way ticket out of town, maybe. Yeah, like I think they have to look long and hard here. Like, I've seen people say, hey, sign him to a 5-year extension. This is a 28-year-old as of today, pending unrestricted free agent with a 40-goal season on his resume. Like, he's going to get paid. A 5-year deal, you just don't see it. Like, that was leaving way too much on the table. Even if he loves it in Vancouver and it's the only NHL home that he's known, I just can't imagine that he and his agent would think, we'll settle for a 5-year deal when you get to July the 1st and there would be teams there willing to pay and go 7 years with him. So even if the Canucks are to crank up the AAV a little bit and maybe an overpayment as the cap goes up, I think that's how the club would try and sell it, but they don't want to seem to lock into the certainly a max contract or even a 7-year deal. If they can't bridge the gap here, then I think, yes, when I go back to this idea of a lack of elite skill, I have to think, just look, Elias Lindholm last year got them, it got Calgary first, it got prospects, it got a player in Kuzmenko. That seems to be the model for a rental player at the trade deadline, especially one with pedigree. And, what could the Canucks do with that cash of a return for a guy like Brock Besser? I think you have to factor that in pretty heavily here. So as much as I like Brock Besser, the person, and have enjoyed seeing him score goals and the playoff performance last year, and it's such a shame that he didn't get to take part in Game 7 against the Oilers, but that's all in the rearview mirror now. In the here and now, I just, I don't get the sense that they see him as sort of the long-term answer to what they're trying to put together here. I can't see the direction right now, so I have some struggles with that, but just as an interested observer, it doesn't feel like Brock Besser is part of the long-term plans for this group of Canucks management and coaching staff.
Lost Harmon.
1 sec there. I think I'm back. Pius Suter's one of their other prominent UFAs. Now, he's in a different situation than Brock, where he's not nearly as high end of an asset, so there isn't as much of an opportunity cost, and especially if you keep him beyond the deadline, and especially given the club's lack of center depth, I don't think they can really afford to peel him off the roster. So I don't think we're talking about him as a trade candidate per se. But how motivated should the Canucks be to re-sign him in your mind?
I think at the right price, he's a useful piece. And I think he'd be a useful piece on just about any team. Now, if you're asking him to be a top 6 guy exclusively, that's not where he's best slotted. I think he has shown that he can be a third-line center, and you hope that you can surround him with, quality players. He's another one, though, that got off to a nice start in the goal-scoring department and has gone remarkably quiet again. I think he went 23 games without a goal at one point. He also leads all Canuck forwards in penalty killing ice time, and I think that's something you have to consider. He and Teddy Bluger, the first guys over the boards. They've traded away JT Miller, and I know it wasn't JT's strong suit, but certainly faceoffs were, and that was one of the reasons that JT got some penalty killing duty as well. So, we kind of lock on to the counting statistics, but I think with a player like Pius Suter, you have to step back and look at his true value. And penalty killing, and the Canucks penalty killing has actually been pretty decent really since the middle of December. Got off to a tough start, but it's been better over the last couple of months. I know third period the night against Utah, they could have used a kill, but I think that was the first shorthanded goal that they'd given up in 11 or 12 opportunities. So, yeah, I mean, to me, Pius Suter is just about as low maintenance as they come. And I think he's a coach's sort of, we always joke about the Swiss Army knife because he is Swiss, but I mean, he is. I mean, versatility is really, I think, what he offers as much as anything. He can play on the wing. He can play up higher in the lineup. But ultimately, if this team is going to improve and get better and bring in more elite skill, you kind of, I think, would like that would flush Pius Suter back down to your bottom 6. But on my, there's room for a Pius Suter on my team. I guess it just depends on the number ultimately. And as a UFA, I mean, I would think that he would have some opportunities elsewhere and some interest from around the National Hockey League. So, curious to see where it goes with him. But, we don't talk about him an awful lot, but I do think that he's just a solid guy and a pretty solid hockey player that can help in a lot of situations.
Do you have room for Ratu on your team? Wrote about it today. Got to see this guy called up, win some faceoffs.
Right. And I read your piece, and quite frankly, I'm a little surprised that Nils Amon and Arshdeep Bains are the 2 guys from Abbotsford that are up right now, and they're just kind of alternating. A team that can't score goals, I think it's probably time to give Lekkerimäki another look. I know that there's been some health issues there, but I'm not sure if they're trying to just sort of, again, continue to let him cook down at the minor league level, but I don't know. I mean, a team that's scoring 1 goal a game, I think you got room for your top offensive prospect in the minors. And so Ratu as well. Look, we talked about Pius Suter and Teddy Bluger as a penalty killer. I don't think people realize just sort of how far south it's gone for Teddy Bluger. We don't talk about him very much. Since Christmas, 23 games for the Vancouver Canucks, Teddy Bluger has 1 point, an assist, hasn't scored a goal. And in his 5-on-5 minutes, the Canucks have been outscored 13-3. So you say, well, he's a fourth-line guy, that's fine. No, it's not. If a fourth-line guy is getting crushed and caved on a team that doesn't score goals, basically you're spotting the opponent and now asking the rest of the team to climb out of a hole when Teddy Bluger's out there. So the offense has gone completely dry. This is a guy that had 10 points in the first 20 games for the Vancouver Canucks. He's a half a point a game guy. And again, I'm not expecting him to go lights out, and I'm not saying that he should be doing, the same things that Elias Paterson should be doing, but it is a team game. And Teddy Bluger, since Christmas, with the injuries that other guys have had, is 5th on this team in 5-on-5 ice time among the forward group and has been outscored 13-3. So no offense when he's out there and getting scored on the regular. That's a bad combination. Essentially, his value to the club is as a penalty killer right now. So I think you got time to move him to the wing and let Aatu Räty be the 4th-line center. Other things aren't working. Yes, to answer your question, Dave, I think I would find space and carve out some space for a guy like Aatu Räty and see if he can't give you a little bit more than Teddy Bluger has over the last 6 weeks.
Jeff, final thing. Trade deadline primer here on Canucks Conversation, 10 days early. It was our question on Twitter to people was like, what do you want to see the Canucks do at the trade deadline? I think for me, it's probably trade Brock Besser. We outlined already what that package could look like. I think that's too good to pass up, especially even if you don't know if you can sign him. Ultimately, I think if they were going to sign him, they would have done it already. I don't think this is headed for a contract extension. So I'm trading Brock Besser. I would like to see them trade Brock Besser. What's the thing you want to see them do?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've sort of reconciled that in my mind now that it probably is time to move off Brock. But beyond that, I wonder, and again, we don't know Rick Tocchet's future, and I do think it sort of hangs in the balance here over these final 25 games, and if they fall short of the playoffs, for the reasons that we talked about earlier and selling to a fan base, I don't think there's an absolute guarantee today that Rick Tocchet's coaching the Vancouver Canucks to start next season if they fall short of the playoffs. If he is going to be here, and he knows that, and management knows that, I do wonder if they try to acquire a few more pieces that sort of fit the mold of a Rick Tocchet team. And I think, look, the Canucks are pretty easy to play against, right? They are not a rugged group. I wonder if they could go out and find a low-cost, a guy that just brings a little more heft. Like, Utah the other night elected not to dress Liam O'Brien. Liam O'Brien is sort of a part-time NHLer, and his role is to be a tough guy for Utah. Utah looks at the Canucks lineup, well, we don't need Liam O'Brien in the lineup tonight. Why do we? Now, it's not about fighting toughness, but wall work and staples and everything else. I do think Kiefer Sherwood brings him on a nightly basis. Dakota Joshua has had some moments, but it's kind of been stops and starts for him. But beyond that, they are not a big physical team. I think that's why they went out and were interested in Drew O'Connor at the very least. And, he had some of that. But I think that another forward with a little bit of snarl, is that going to put them over the top? No, not at all. But does that sort of match up with the way Rick Tocchet would like his team to play? Is it something that's lacking on this roster? Yeah. And so if you're moving pieces around, if it's a low-cost acquisition, if it's a player out, I think that's something that I think the Canucks, I think Rick Tocchet would like, and ultimately, it wouldn't surprise me if that's a road that the Canucks travel down before March the 7th.
Jeff, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you probably 3 times before the trade deadline actually comes around. So, Jeff, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
All right, boys. Thanks.